Good afternoon, everyone. This is Liz Christofferson, the
The
founder.
broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Sorry, go ahead. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Liz Christofferson, the founder and CEO of Empowered Consulting Group. And we're here on behalf of Practice Pay Solutions, who is providing the support for this wonderful eUniversity webinar series. Hopefully you've had a chance to visit their website, www.practicepaysolutions.com, and look at the eUniversity programs that are available to you. We have a wonderful, wonderful guest today, Wendy Weiss, and we're going to talk about 6 things you need to know before you call another prospect. But let me tell you a little bit about Wendy before we get started. Wendy is the queen of cold calling. She is an author, speaker, sales trainer, and sales coach. She is recognized as one of the leading authorities on lead generation, cold calling, and new business development. She helps clients speed up their sales cycle, reach more prospects directly, and generate more sales revenue. Her clients include Avon Products, ADP, Sprint, and thousands of entrepreneurs throughout the country. She's been featured in the New York Times, Business Week, Entrepreneur Magazine, Selling Power, Forbes, and various other businesses and sales publications. She's the author of Cold Calling for Women, Opening Doors and Closing Sales, and the Sales Winner's Handbook, Essential Scripts and Strategies to Skyrocket Sales Performance. She specializes in working with companies that want to increase sales revenue by generating new business and/or companies with underperforming sales teams. She has helped clients double and triple the number of new business appointments they can schedule, resulting in a matching increase in sales. So Wendy, thank you so much for joining us on the call today. We look forward to hearing more about your program. Please share with us your brilliance.
Thank you so much, Liz, and thank you to you and eUniversity for inviting me to be here today. And congratulations to each and every one of you that are watching this training session right now. We are going to talk about the 6 things that you need to know before you pick up the telephone to call another prospect. And my goal for today is to give you some tips and some tools that are going to help you immediately increase your results, because I want you to leave this session with at least one new idea or one tip or one tool that you can try out right away. Now, in terms of what we will be discussing today, if you are brand new in sales, then it's likely everything I say is going to be a revelation to you. If, however, you've been around for a while, you may have heard some of these things before. And if that happens, if I say something and you find yourself thinking, oh, yeah, I know that, I'm going to ask you to keep a beginner's mind, because being successful, whether it's in prospecting or in sales in general, it's not about what you know. It's about what you do. And sometimes it's the real simple little things that are going to make the most difference for you. And the best example that I know of this is in sports, where if there's a team that has a losing season, at the end of the season, the owners fire the coach, they go out, they hire a new coach. What's the first thing the new coach does? The new coach goes back to the team and says, back to basics. And you know what? It works exactly the same way here. So if you get one tip or one idea from this training session that results in one appointment or one opportunity or one sale that you wouldn't have otherwise had, then our time together today will have been well spent. I will be taking some questions at the end of this session, so I'm looking forward to that. And also at the end of this session, I'll be telling you how you can get your copy of the Sales Winner's Handbook, Essential Scripts and Strategies to Skyrocket Sales Performance. Because if you like what you hear today and you feel like you could use some help to get to the next level, I will tell you all about the book later on and invite those of you who are ready to order right away. So grab a pen and paper, because I know you're going to want to take some notes. This is what we are going to talk about today. First of all, we will talk about how to find the prospects out of everybody in the entire world that might possibly buy something from you. Who is most likely to buy from you? We will also talk about how do you stand out from the crowd, from everybody else in the entire world that might be selling something similar. How do you guarantee that prospects are going to be receptive to what you have to say to them? And of course, how do you build rapport and build respect and ultimately build a relationship with these prospects? And how do you make your message, what you have to say, really resonate with that prospect so that they want to engage with you, so that they want to hear what you have to say? And this, of course, is all in service of winning your prospect's business. So before we jump into all of that, I am going to answer the question that I know many of you may be asking, and that is, who is this queen of cold calling anyway, and why is she uniquely qualified to be here today and doing this training session? Well, I will share with you that I was not supposed to be the queen of cold calling. I was actually supposed to be a ballerina. I grew up in Pennsylvania. I moved to New York City, where I still live and work, and I moved here as a teenager to dance. That's a picture of me when I was 5 years old before my very first recital. And so I moved here as a teenager, and eventually, like every artist in New York City, I needed a day job. And I got a job with a telemarketing company that did appointment setting and new business development. And it turned out I was good at it. Who knew? Because ballet dancers, we don't talk. We dance. We don't talk. And so I did that day job for a while, and then eventually I started my own business where I had clients that I would represent, and I did all the new business development for them. And from there, I segued into the business that I have today. The business that I have today is working with entrepreneurs and business owners and consultants and coaches and sales professionals, people that need to develop new business. And I've got to tell you that I feel like I'm doing something that's pretty important, especially today because it's still difficult out there. And I will share with you that I built my entire business by talking to people on the telephone. If you visit my website, which is queenofcoldcalling.com, and you look at my client list, you'll see that I have a fairly impressive roster of corporate clients. Just about every client that is on that list, I can trace back either directly to somebody that I cold called, or if they're from a referral, I can trace that referral back to somebody that I cold called. Now, I'm not telling you this to brag. I'm really not. This is for those of you that struggle with this. I was lucky. I didn't know anything about business. I was a ballet dancer. But I was really lucky because early in my career, somebody taught me the skill. Somebody taught me how to prospect. And learning that skill enabled me to build a business. And so the really good news for those of you that are struggling is that what we are talking about today is a communication skill. And like any communication skill, it can be learned and it can be improved on. So let's talk now about generating appointments. If your process starts with an appointment, you want to go and meet face-to-face with a prospect, or maybe you want to do an online meeting with a prospect, or maybe you're just looking for new opportunities. There are actually only 4 ways that you can generate that appointment or find that new opportunity. The first way is through marketing, that you undertake some marketing activities if you're a business owner or a solopreneur, or maybe if you're lucky and you work with a big company, there's a marketing department that does the marketing activities. Maybe that's something online or email marketing, maybe it's direct mail, some kind of marketing activity that gets a prospect to self-identify, and they pick up the phone and they call you. And that is always great when that happens. The next way to generate an appointment or an opportunity is through referrals. That you go to existing customers or to your circle of influence, and you ask this person to facilitate an introduction to somebody that they know that might have a need of whatever it is you sell. That's a great way to build a pipeline, to get an opportunity, to generate an appointment. The next way is through networking. And that might be face-to-face networking, where you're going to networking meetings like the Chamber of Commerce, or maybe trade groups or conferences or something like that, or maybe you're networking online through social media like LinkedIn or Facebook. Again, another good way to generate opportunities, generate appointments. The fourth way is through cold calling, that you pick up the telephone and you introduce yourself to a prospect that you would like to talk to. Now here's the thing. The first three activities that I mentioned, marketing, referrals, and networking, are all inherently passive in that once you undertake that activity, you then have to wait for somebody else to do something. If you're marketing, well, you've got to wait for that prospect to call you. If you're looking to generate referrals, well, you have to wait for that customer to facilitate that introduction. The same thing really when you're networking, because when you're networking, you hardly ever meet the person directly that you're looking to meet. You usually meet people that know the people you want to meet. And so again, you're in this position of waiting for someone to facilitate an introduction. Cold calling is very direct. You target the prospect you're interested in meeting, you pick up the phone and you introduce yourself. Cold calling is actually also the only way to make up the difference between the number of appointments that you are getting or number of opportunities that you are finding through marketing, referrals, and networking, and the number of opportunities or appointments that you actually need to hit that whatever dollar amount of revenue you're looking to generate. And the bottom line here really is that no matter where you find a lead, whether it's through marketing, referrals, or networking, social media, cold calling, at some point you've got to talk to that person on the telephone. And again, it comes back to skill. So I do want to talk for a moment about some of the myths and the misconceptions that exist about prospecting and about cold calling in particular. One of the myths is that it's about opening up the phone book and calling anyone. Not true. To be successful in prospecting, you have to be highly targeted, and I'm going to talk about that in just a minute. Then there is the numbers game myth. Make 100 dials a day, and eventually somebody's going to say yes to you. And if that doesn't work, make 150 dials a day, and if that doesn't work, make 200 dials a day. Prospecting is a numbers game, but it's not mindlessly dialing the phone. The real numbers game is in conversion, and it's in the conversion of your dials into conversations with likely prospects, and then the conversion of those conversations into appointments or opportunities. That is the real numbers game. And then there's my all-time favorite myth, that prospecting, especially cold calling, is about going through the no's and the hang-ups until somebody says yes to you, which is probably the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life. Who in their right mind would want to do this? And I am here today to tell you that this is not what cold calling is about. Then there's the myth that if you're going to prospect on the telephone, you've got to get really good at rebuttals. You've got to practice those rebuttals because your prospects are just going to say no, so you have to get really good at an answer when they say no. I actually had a conversation with a colleague of mine recently. Excuse me. And we were talking about the skill of cold calling, or the skill that's involved in telephone prospecting. And my colleague said to me that he thought the skill in prospecting was in knowing what to say when the prospect says no. Well, I've got to tell you that I was horrified, because to me, the skill is in knowing what to say so that the prospect says yes. And then there's probably the most insidious myth of all, and that is the myth of the born salesperson, that there are somehow these people out there that they're just born knowing what to say and what to do. This is not true. The queen of cold calling was not born knowing how to cold call or knowing how to prospect. I was lucky because I learned how to do this. Somebody taught me. And again, the really good news is if you're struggling with this, this is something that you can learn as well. So I promised you the 6 things that you need to know before you call another prospect. So let's begin. Number 1, write this down, belief. And then write down this diagram as well. You'll see that it says belief, and then there's an arrow, and it says actions, and there's another arrow, and then it says results. And the reason I want you to write this down is that whatever it is that you believe about what you are doing affect your actions. And of course, your actions affect your results. So if you don't like your results, you often have to circle back around and look at what you believe. And when it comes to prospecting, a lot of people believe things that don't help them. You may believe that nobody wants to talk to you. Well, the belief that nobody wants to talk to you is not a belief that supports your ability to be successful. You may believe that you're bothering people, you're interrupting people who are going to be very negative, perhaps angry, and they're going to hang up on you. This is not a belief that supports your ability to be successful. What if you believed instead that you were calling prospects that because you'd done your homework, you had a pretty good idea that they had a challenge or a problem or an issue that you could help them with. And you were able to reach that prospect, and they were indeed happy to engage with you, happy to talk to you because they did have a problem, they did have a challenge, and they needed some help. What if that's what you believed about making prospecting phone calls? How would that change? How would that belief change the actions that you'd be able to take? And then how would that change your results? Prospecting is frequently, and especially cold calling, is frequently talked about very emotionally. It's either people love to prospect, love to cold call, or they hate to cold call. The opposite of loving to cold call is not, the opposite of hating cold calling or hating prospecting is not loving it. The opposite is actually being neutral. Write that down. You want to get to neutral. You don't have to love this, because you just want to get to neutral, because neutral is a place where you can function. You can do what you need to do without emotion and angst. So we're going for neutral here. Rule number 2, write this one down. Target. Out of everyone in the entire world that maybe might buy something from you, you're looking at the people that are most likely to buy and then come back and buy a whole lot more. It's not about opening up the phone book and calling anyone. So how do you identify these people that are likely to buy from you and then come back and buy a whole lot more? The first thing that you want to do, and you want to write these things down, is you need to develop some parameters about what makes a qualified prospect for you. And they need to be concrete. Sometimes when I'm working with a client, and I'll say to them, describe your ideal prospect. What are you looking for? And they'll say things to me like, well, they should be nice. They should be easy to work with. And you know what? We all want nice customers and customers that are easy to work with. But that's not going to help you find them. You want to be very specific about who you are looking for. If you're in B2B, maybe it's the size of the company, either a number of employees or in revenue. Maybe it's a specific geographic location. Maybe it's a specific industry. If you're in the consumer market, Maybe it's the age of the individuals, the geographic location, and education level. Who are you looking for? The more concrete and specific you are, the easier it is to find these people. If you are calling in B2B, you always write this down. You want to call the highest level person that you believe is the decision maker, because that person either will be or they'll know who is, and they can give you a referral. And you are always in a better position going in too high and maybe having to move down a level than going in too low and getting stuck. Because the bottom line here, write this down and underline it. If you're not speaking with a qualified prospect, they're not going to become your customer. They're not going to buy anything from you. And that really is the bottom line. Okay, rule number 3, write this one down. If this is a skill, and it is the skill in answering the question, why should your prospect be interested? You may have heard it expressed as, what's in it for me? That really is what your prospect is thinking. When you pick up the phone to call a prospect, they want to know how can you help them. That's what they want to know. And it is your job, and this is a skill, to be able to explain that, to answer that question, why should they be interested? And that is about the value that you provide. Write this down. Nobody cares what you do. Write that down and underline it. Your prospects want to know, what are the problems that you solve? How do you help your customers? And let me give you an example here. I'm going to read an email that I got from someone. She said, Wendy, I was wondering if you could give me advice on how to properly word my script. I start by introducing myself. Then I say, their company name helps associations with their marketing and communications to their members, including new member kits, billing systems, and direct mail. I'm calling to see if we could stop by for a quick 15-minute meeting. I always get cut off right there without having a chance to offer a time. Now here's the issue. This caller is making herself and the company that she represents into a commodity. She's calling associations, and they do marketing communications, new member kits, billing systems, and direct mail. So these are all things. These are commodities. And that prospect on the other end of the line is thinking, we already have new member kits. We have a billing system. We have direct mail. She's making herself uninteresting. She would be better off. And she says here she's calling associations, and I'm assuming she's talking either to an executive director or a membership director, because she'd want to call the highest level person that she thinks is the decision maker. What is the challenge that an executive director or a membership director of an association might have having to do with things like new member kits, billing systems, direct mail, marketing communications? Well, what about membership growth and membership retention? That is something that executive directors and membership directors of associations are concerned about. So rather than getting on the phone and just listing all the things that they do, because remember, nobody cares what you do, she would be better off saying something like, we have a track record of helping membership associations grow and retain their members, because that would be a challenge that most likely the people she was talking to would have. And then she could go on to back that up by telling a success story. Now, a success story is like a mini case study. I'm using the word story, but it's not made up. It is true. You give an example of a customer or a client that you've worked with that had a challenge that you were able to help them with. So in this case, she might say something like, she'd introduce herself and her company name. She'd say, we have a track record of helping membership associations grow and retain their members. For example, we just worked with, she could name the company, or rather the association. They were losing their members as fast as they were gaining them. So we came in and we were able to help them, and that would be a sentence about how they helped them. And now their membership has gone up by whatever percentage it's gone up by. That would be an example of a success story. And success stories, those mini case studies, they are very, very powerful. Your prospects get it. Okay, rule number 4, write this one down. What is your goal? So far we've had 3 rules before. We've had your belief, we've had target, we've had skill, and what is your goal? When you pick up the telephone, what is it that you want to accomplish? What action do you want your prospect to take? Let me give you an example here. I got a call recently from a financial advisor, and he was actually doing his entire process over the telephone. And I said to him, what's your goal for your very first phone call? And the first thing he said to me was, well, I want to build rapport. And yes, you do want to build rapport, but that's not really the goal of the phone call. The goal of the phone call is what action do you want your prospect to take? And so when I said that to him, he said, well, and remember he was a financial advisor, he said, well, I want them to let me handle their investments. That's too big a goal. To go from hello to you're going to handle my investments, that's not reasonable. That's your end goal, but that's probably not the goal of the very first phone call. So what I told this financial advisor, and everybody write this down, first of all, your goal has to be bite-sized. Hello to you can handle all of my investments, that's not bite-sized, it's too big. But hello to getting agreement to have a telephone conversation, to then maybe getting answers to specific questions, those are all bite-sized goals. So you simply take it step by step. Those are also concrete goals. Wanting to build a relationship, that's not a concrete goal. That's not about the action that you want a prospect to take. Gaining a prospect's agreement to have an in-depth conversation, that's concrete. That's an action that the prospect can take. Getting agreement to answer some questions, that's concrete. That's an agreement. That's an action that your prospect can take. And your goal also needs to move your process forward. Building rapport, while it's an important thing, does not move your process forward. So write those 3 things down. Bite-sized, concrete, and moves the process forward. And by the way, I meant to say this earlier. The Sales Winner's Handbook has sample scripts, sample introductory scripts in a number of different industries. So you can actually take a look at those scripts and, first of all, use them as a model to create your own. And second of all, see how the scripts progress. So you can see how to gain agreement to step 1, and then you gain agreement to the next step, and then you gain agreement to the next step, and so on. Okay, so we have had 4 rules. We've had belief, we've had target, we've had skill, and then number 4, know your goal. Rule number 5, write this one down, have a system. This is probably the hardest one of all of them. Prospecting, for some reason, generally people don't have a process or a system. Businesses have systems and processes for everything except for prospecting. And in 2013, it is much harder than it was even 5 years ago. And so it's really important to have a good system. And there are 3 parts of your system. The first part is having some form of contact tracking. I'm continually astounded in 2013 to see the number of companies, sometimes really big companies, that are not tracking their prospecting. They have nothing that they're using to track prospects. And it's vitally important that you do not let opportunities slip through the cracks simply because you forgot to call someone. So having some kind of contact tracking, and it doesn't have to be expensive. There are free softwares on the market. There are very inexpensive softwares on the market. So you need to have something to track what you are doing. The next element is your best practices. And best practices, that simply means what is the best way to pursue prospects in your market. And let me give you an example. Because one of the questions that I am asked all of the time is about voicemail. You know, Wendy, should I leave a message? And I'll tell you that my answer has changed. If you'd asked me this a few years ago, I would have said no, hang up and call somebody else. But today, because it's harder to get people on the telephone, it makes sense to use voicemail as a tool. However, the chances of somebody calling you back, if you leave them just one message, that's pretty minimal, actually. However, we have found with our clients that conversion, people calling you back, increases if you do a voicemail campaign. And a voicemail campaign is a series of messages that you leave over time. And if you've got an email address, you also send an email. So this is how it works. You call a prospect, and I'm going to do, we usually do either a 4 or sometimes a 5-call campaign, but I'm going to talk about a 4-call voicemail campaign. And it goes like this. You call your prospect. If you get voicemail, you leave voicemail number 1. Voicemail number 1 focuses on how you help your customers, and you ask that prospect to call you back. If you've got an email address, you send essentially the same thing in an email. You wait 3 to 5 business days. If you've not heard back from your prospect, you call them again. You leave, if you get voicemail, if you don't reach the prospect directly, you leave voicemail number 2. Voicemail number 2 is different from number 1. Still focuses on how you help customers, but it is a different message. If you've got that email address, you also send along an email that says essentially the same thing. You wait 3 to 5 business days. If you've not heard back from that prospect, you call them again. If you get voicemail, you leave voicemail number 3. Voicemail number 3 is different from number 1 and number 2. It still focuses on how you help customers, but it is a different message. If you've got that email address, you also send along that email that says essentially the same thing that you've said in your voicemail. You wait 3 to 5 business days. If you haven't heard back from your prospect, you call them again. This is the 4th call, and we're doing a 4-call campaign. So the last message is always different. I call it the move-on message. And the move-on message goes something like this. I've tried to reach you for some time to discuss, and you fill in the blank with what you'd like to talk about. I haven't heard back from you, and I know you're really busy. So I'm assuming this isn't a good time for us to have this conversation. I don't want to make a pest of myself, so I won't be calling you again. And you name a time frame. It could be 3 months. It could be 6 months. It could be a year. If you've been meaning to get back to me and haven't had a chance, I'd welcome the opportunity to discuss, and you fill in the blank with what you wanted to talk about. If you've got that email address, you send essentially the same thing in an email. If you do not hear back from that prospect, but you still think that's a good lead for you, you take that contact and you recycle them. Put them ahead 3 months or 6 months or a year, and you try them again. Now, I will tell you that this is actually the most returned message, and there's a reason for that. First of all, you've left some good messages already, and there are people, they're in the market today for what you're selling. They put you on the list to call back. There are other people that maybe they're not in the market today, but they know at some point in the future they will be, and so they also put you on the list. They're going to call you back, but they haven't gotten to you yet because you know what? Everyone is so busy these days. And so when you say to them, I won't be calling you again, you actually bump to the top of the list and they return the phone call. And we have seen very consistently, you'll get some return phone calls from messages that you leave, but you will get most of them from that move on message at the end. It's a little bit of reverse psychology that works very, very well. There are examples in the Sales Winners Handbook. There are actually examples of voicemail campaigns in different industries that you can take a look at and use as a model to create your own voicemails. I will also tell you that it would be close to impossible to execute on a best practice like this if you are not using some form of contact tracking to help you keep track of which message you're on. Okay, and the third element of your system is your scripts. Now, you know, sometimes I get pushback on the word script. People will say to me, oh, well, I can't be myself, I'm not an actor. You know, a script is not something that you're going to read word for word no matter what the other person says. A script is simply being prepared, that when you get a prospect on the phone, you know exactly how you're going to introduce yourself and the points that you want to make and how you're going to ask for that meeting or ask for whatever your next step is. If you're going to leave a voicemail, that it's clear and concise and you know exactly what you're going to say so that you can say it intelligently and in the amount of time you've got to say it in the voicemail before you get cut off. And that's what a script is. And it's vitally important, rather than winging it, it's vitally important to have scripts that work for you, because what you say matters. Okay, so we have had 5 rules so far. We've had belief. We've had target. We've had increase your skill level. Have a goal for each and every conversation that you have with a prospect. Number 5, have a system. Rule number 6, and write this one down, take action, because rules 1 through 5 without number 6 don't actually count for much. A whole lot of belief in what you're doing without taking any action on it, that's just daydreaming. And so I want to give you some tips that you can use to take action consistently. You know, there's a lot of talk these days about the law of attraction. I don't actually believe in the law of attraction. I believe in the law of action. So this is what you can do to take action consistently. First of all, set up an appointment with yourself. Put it in your calendar, your phone, whatever it is that you use to keep track of your time. Make an appointment with yourself. And you know what? You don't have to make an appointment for 7 hours or 8 hours. If you're not used to doing a lot of telephone prospecting, pick a reasonable amount of time that you can actually execute on, put it in your calendar, and keep that appointment. And then make an appointment for the next day, and the next day, and the next day, and the next day. One of the biggest mistakes that I see are people that say, oh, I'm going to make phone calls for 8 hours next Tuesday. And then, of course, next Tuesday rolls around. You have other things you need to do. You don't really want to make calls for 8 hours. You don't have the stamina to make calls for 8 hours, and so you don't do it. But then you say to yourself, you know what, I'm going to make calls for 8 hours next Tuesday. That doesn't work. You're better off saying, I'm going to make calls for half an hour every single day and do it. Get yourself a calling buddy. Partner up. Get an accountability buddy, somebody else that also needs to make calls. And this is how this works. Let's say you're having a bad day. You call up your buddy. You say, I really don't feel like making my calls today. I'm tired. I didn't get a lot of sleep. The kids were sick. I was up all night. I've got all this other work I have to do. I don't really feel like making my calls. And your buddy's job is to listen to you and say, I understand. Now go make your calls. And, of course, you do exactly the same thing. You support your buddy when your calling buddy is having a bad day as well. And then you know what else? Reward yourself for taking action. This does not have to be a big, expensive reward. It can be as simple as you put half an hour on your calendar, you made an appointment with yourself to make calls. You kept that appointment. The weather is finally getting nice here in New York City. You go out and you take a walk. Or maybe you get yourself an ice cream cone. Or you just do something nice for yourself to reward yourself for taking action. And when you do that, you will be astounded to see how your pipeline will grow. So to recap, the 6 things that you need to know before you call another prospect, it really all starts with your belief, how you think about what this is that you are doing. The belief that nobody wants to talk to you doesn't support you. And so if you're one of those people that struggles with this, and you won't change it overnight, but start to challenge yourself a little bit. See if there's something else that you can believe, because it is so imperative to have beliefs that support your ability to be successful at whatever it is that you're doing. Rule number 2, target. You are looking essentially for the people that are looking for you. This is not about opening up the phone book and calling anybody and engaging in some kind of struggle. You're looking for the people that are looking for you. And when you look for the people that are looking for you, it is so much easier. And so that means you've got to spend some time up front, and that will make everything work so much better. Above all, rule number 3, this is a communication skill, and it can be learned and it can be improved on. And in just a moment, I will be telling you about my book, The Sales Winner's Handbook. But you know what? If you have hated every single thing that I've had to say today, that is okay. Google cold calling, Google prospecting, Google lead generation, Google appointment setting. There are resources that are out there for you. And this is a skill. No one is born knowing how to do this. The queen of cold calling was not born knowing how to do this. It can be learned. It can be improved on. Know your goal, and have a goal not just for your first phone call, but every time you engage with a prospect. Have a bite-sized, concrete, actionable goal that moves your process forward. Rule number 5. Again, this is probably the hardest one, but you take it step by step. If you're a sales rep at a very big company, maybe they've set up a system for you. If you're an entrepreneur or a business owner, you'll have to do it yourself. But it can be done, and you take it step by step. And then rule number 6. And again, rules 1 through 5 don't count for much without rule number 6. It is about taking action consistently to grow your pipeline. And when you do that, you will be astonished to see how your sales can grow. Okay, so before we open up for questions, which is actually always my favorite part, if you got value from what I talked about today, this is really just the tip of the iceberg of all I could show you, and I wouldn't be doing my job if I didn't extend the opportunity for you to take it to the next level. So this is what it's about, the Sales Winner's Handbook. The subtitle of the book is Essential Scripts and Strategies to Skyrocket Sales Performance. I wrote the Sales Winner's Handbook because the 2 questions that I am asked all of the time are either, Wendy, I am so uncomfortable, or Wendy, what do I say? And I'm a really big believer that if you know what you're going to say, you're not going to be that uncomfortable. And so that's why I wrote the Sales Winner's Handbook. It is 155 pages. There are 53 scripts that you can use to set appointments, respond to objections, close sales, essentially scripts for what to say in every situation. There are 12 examples of each script. There are 144 questions, a whole chapter on questioning, to qualify prospects, gather information, justify pricing, close sales, and it comes with $227 worth of additional business building audios and guides, and those are free. My big corporate clients like Avon Products and ADP have paid me millions for these scripts, and you can have the scripts that you need in the Sales Winners Handbook for $47. And there is the link. It is bit.ly/PPS-SWH. These are the bonuses that come with the book. And these are all digital bonuses, so they're downloads, they're instant gratification. You'll get Finding Your Ideal Prospects, those who are most likely to buy. That's a video. It's a $99 value. It's free. You'll get a copy of the transcript from the interview I did with Jeffrey James, where we discussed creating voicemail campaigns, and that's a $27 value. Yours free. You'll get the voicemail report, Naming and Reaching the Decision Maker. That's a $27 value. Yours free. You'll get the Ideal Leads Quick Start Guide. That's a $27 value. Yours free. And you'll get the Ideal Prospect Profile Workbook, and that's a $47 value. Yours free. So all of these are digital. They come with the book. It's instant gratification. You can download them, and then we ship the book to you priority mail. The Sales Winners Handbook comes with my 100% lifetime, and that's my lifetime guarantee. And what that means is if you order the book and you get it, and for whatever reason you are not happy with your purchase, you let us know, and we will refund your money, period. I will tell you that almost never happens, but should that happen, that is our policy. So there's really no risk in ordering the Sales Winners Handbook. And again, the link is bit.ly/PPS-SWH. And Liz, do we have questions?
Well, Wendy, this is Carol Vickers. I work with Liz Christopherson, and I do have a couple of questions. You had mentioned that it's important
to... Okay, great. Thank you, Carol.
You're welcome. It's important to reach the highest level when you're calling. Well, what do you do when you reach a gatekeeper, someone who prevents you from getting to that next level person that you know is the one you need to talk to?
Okay, that is a great question. Thank you for that question. And that is actually something we could spend a whole hour just on gatekeepers. So I'm going to give you the mini version. And the mini version goes like this. Imagine for a moment that Hillary Clinton is calling your prospect. And the prospect's gatekeeper says to Hillary Clinton, what is this in reference to? I'm willing to bet that Hillary Clinton does not say, well, I used to be the Secretary of State, and before that I was Senator from New York State, and before that I was a candidate for President of the United States, and before that I was First Lady. She's probably going to say something instead like, this is Hillary Clinton, or please tell whatever the prospect's name is, this is Hillary Clinton, or this is Hillary Clinton, is she available? Now, I know what you're all thinking. Hey, Wendy, I'm not famous, I'm not Hillary Clinton. Doesn't matter. Whatever you might think about Hillary Clinton, and I know some people, more people love her these days, some people don't like her, the woman has a lot of confidence. And the answer to the question, what is this in reference to, is your name, or your name and your company name said with a lot of confidence. Please tell the prospect it's your name, or please tell the prospect it's your name from your company. That is the answer. And it needs to be said with a whole lot of confidence. You are more likely these days to encounter a temp than you are to encounter that mythological dragon lady gatekeeper that has been with the boss for 45 years. Those women don't exist anymore. They're the boss now. The Sales Winners Handbook has the complete gatekeeper scripts. I've broken it out if you're calling large Fortune 500 companies or Fortune 100 companies, or calling small businesses. I've broken it out in 2 different ways, and the complete scripts are in the Sales Winners Handbook. That is the mini version. Good question.
Okay, a follow-up from that. Say you get in, you've got past the gatekeeper, and your prospect just says flat out, I'm not interested.
Okay, another good question. If everyone that you talk to, I'm going to take a step back here. A lot of people treat I'm not interested as an objection. That if a prospect says to you, I'm not interested, you then have to try and come up with something that they'd be interested in. To me, I'm not interested is not an objection. I'm not interested means one of 2 things. If your prospect says, I'm not interested, that probably means you're not saying anything interesting. The second thing it might mean is that you're not talking to the right person. But the most likely thing that it means is you are not saying anything interesting. And so that is why it is so important to craft an introduction that's going to resonate with the person that you're talking to. And so this goes back to rule number 3, your skill level. What you say matters. And if you are making your calls and prospect after prospect says, I'm not interested, you need to go back and think about what it is that you're saying and what are the problems that you solve for customers, and how can you talk about that in a way that's going to interest the people that you are calling. It does take some upfront work, but when you do the work up front, people stop saying, I'm not interested, and it's so much nicer. The Sales Winners Handbook does have a lot of examples and a template that you can use to build your introductory script. So you can take a look at the samples and use them as a model. You can use the template and plug in your information. That was a good question. Thank you, Carol.
You're welcome. Thank you for that answer. It's very good. It also makes me think perhaps I could just even ask that question. Oh, what would you be interested in? So I was interested in how you explained about the voicemail campaign. And 4 calls, it seems extreme when I think about it, but I get the idea that there's one that you could move on from, and that might be the final one. But what if you have a prospect that you have been having a conversation with, and all of a sudden they stop returning your calls? What then?
That's a great question. And that does happen sometimes. You're talking to somebody and then they seem to disappear off the face of the earth. You do need to recognize that you don't necessarily know what's going on with this prospect. That they seem to disappear does not necessarily mean that they're no longer interested. It could mean that something else has come up that's on their plate that they have to take care of first. And the other thing is that most salespeople do not follow up enough. Your comment, Carol, that the voicemail campaign seemed like a lot of messages. And if you stop and think about it, it's really only 4 messages delivered over a period of about a month. 4 voicemails, 4 emails, if you've got an email address. So you're contacting somebody a total of 8 times over a month. That's not actually a lot. Most salespeople do not follow up with their prospects enough. There have been studies done that show that most sales are made somewhere between the 8th to the 12th contact with a prospect. And a contact is a conversation, it's a voicemail, it's an email, it's a fax, it's a letter, some form of contact. The great majority of salespeople stop at about 2 or 3 contacts. So if somebody is not calling you back that has expressed some interest, previously, you do need to continue to try and reach out to them. You need to reach out to them in multiple ways. Certainly gather some intelligence if there are other people that you can talk to that are at that company or know that prospect to kind of try and find out what's going on. Set up a Google alert on that prospect so that you glean information anytime there's anything written about the prospect to help you know what's going on, and continue to reach out to that prospect, because you don't know until they tell you why they've gone quiet.
Right, very good point. And when I consider it, it is the people who were persistent when they were approaching me that are the ones that finally got the sale for me as well. So, very good point. We can't give up too soon.
Persistence counts.
Yes, absolutely. Well, thank you, Wendy. That was most wonderful. And I wrote down notes as you suggested, and I took those 6 points because they are very valuable no matter what kind of calling you're making. And let's face it, we're all in sales, right?
We are all in sales, absolutely.
Right. Well, I will just pass it to Liz now to wrap things up. Is there anything else you wanted to share with us, Wendy?
Well, I want to thank all the people that will be watching this recording in the future and that are with us today. And I want to finish with my all-time favorite quote from Henry Ford, because Henry Ford said, either you think you can or you think you can't, and either way you're right.
Yes. And what is your I would like your website address just one more time.
The website is queenofcoldcalling.com.
Wonderful.
And the Sales Winners Handbook is bit.ly/PPS-SWH.
Wonderful. Thank you, Wendy.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Wendy, thanks again. It's Liz Christofferson on behalf of Practice Pace Solutions. We really appreciate you taking the time to not only prepare the presentation, but to share this wonderful work with our target audience. So thank you very much. We appreciate that. We wish all of you well, and again, I'd like to encourage you, visit the website, www.practicepaySolutions.com. Look at the eUniversity programs that are there and see what other areas of expertise you might need assistance with. And finally, don't forget, if you haven't signed up for the Business Mastery Series, we have round 2, which will start later this fall in August, I believe. So pay attention to the website and sign up for that event as well. You'll have the opportunity to learn from experts in the field on a variety of topics that are important and of value to entrepreneurs and small business owners. Thanks everyone for your time today, and we look forward to the next session with you.